Hello everyone, Jim here with Sunrise Farm. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be planting collard greens. So I have this 162 grow out tray full of collards. We're going to see how many plants we got because we have some double germination, some not germinated at all, but we'll see how many we have. These collards are about a little over 7 weeks old. They should have been in the ground already, but we're going to get them planted. You can see right here, I have 2 rows prepped. I just turned the water onto my drip tape, so it's going to take about 20-30 minutes for it to start showing up. And over here is where we just planted in our last video 2 double rows of cabbage. Now those cabbage were offset, stagger planted 2 feet apart on each side of the drip tape, but in actuality stagger planted to where they're planted on each emitter, which is 1 foot apart, creating 2 feet apart on each row, and then about 16 inches apart from plant to plant diagonally. On these 2, we're going to do double rows, and we're going to do a similar stagger plant, but what we're going to do is plant the collard greens a little tighter. You could look at collards, collards and cabbage are very closely related. They're part of the brassica family. You could almost look at collards as a loose leaf version of a cabbage. And so because of that, they're not creating big heads, they're just creating leaves, and you're going to harvest the leaves pretty regular and often. And so in that case, when we plant on our double row, we're going to plant on the 1 foot emitters, which is what the drip tape is in my case. So we're going to go down one side directly on the one foot emitters, and then we'll come back up the other side, and we'll stagger plant it in this sense. We'll split the difference from the first row. So they'll be 1 foot apart on both rows, but they'll be offset from each other from row to row. And we're going to have 2 rows of these. All right, so just a few little quick tidbits about getting ready to plant this 2 double rows of collards. Of course, if you've watched other videos of mine, you'll know that I plant almost every single crop now. I switched in the beginning of the year, being 2023, I switched in the beginning of the year to a main line and drip tape for my rows. I plant almost everything on drip tape. It just makes the watering aspect of life down here in Zone 8B and the amount of plot space we're utilizing so much easier, to where you can just turn the water on, set it on a timer, let it do its thing, and you don't have to sit there and wonder about it, and you don't have to run overhead sprinklers and water the entire area. Anyway, just for drip tape has made my life so much simpler. So if that happens to be something that you've thought about or have the area to do and maybe you haven't thought about it and you'd like to try it, I would highly recommend it. But I also, along through this season, was able to purchase a Haas double wheel hoe. Now there are several double wheel hoes or single wheel hoes on the market. I'm only going to talk about the Haas wheel because that's the only one I have experience with. It has been such a very simple, great tool to operate, and it has many attachments that are very easy and simple and relatively quick to change out. And so when you use it with the plow set that it comes with, you can first line up to where your drip tape's going to be. You measure out your rows like I have. You go ahead and run for me, I run a string line, but you go ahead and open up your furrow to lay your drip tape. I don't happen to have the drip tape layer attachment, but if you open up a furrow to lay your drip tape, you can then pull your drip tape in. I recommend hooking it up, flushing it out, capping it off, and then turning it on once you've capped it off so that it'll inflate and stay straight. And then you can take and turn when the plows are this way on the double wheel hoe, you basically swap them and they cover, so they'll create a mound. So you can cover the drip tape rather, and it creates what you can see here in the shots, and that is it creates 2 mini furrows they're about 11 inches apart. So about 5.5 or so inches from the center of the drip tape, if you've been able to cover the drip tape truly down the center. I will confess, with different debris in my ground, meaning little twigs and the occasional rock or something, it may shift me a little sideways, so it's not going to be 1,000% accurate. But the point being is that it gives you two quality rows already kind of marked out if you're going to double row plant something. And I try to double row plant as much as possible. I even experiment with things they say you shouldn't do it, just to see if it's going to work in my application or if I need to make adjustments. But in this case, we're going to double row plant collard greens. Now again, this is a 162 tray grow out. And so when you do a grow out tray, it creates plugs. And so these plugs have very nice roots. It's hard to probably tell. Maybe I'll get a little close-up shot when I edit the video for you. But if you can tell right there, this is a tremendously good plug. You can see that it creates its own root ball. It's got the soil tied up, so it comes out very easily with a gentle tug. That's how you know your plants are technically ready, is they'll come out fairly easy with a gentle tug. In this type of tray, which I did purchase from Haas as well, it's called a PropTech tray. That's a brand. And it creates these root training grooves. Now this one, the roots are a little bound up more than I'd like. In a previous video, I said I'd had some back issues, so it prevented me from getting in the garden and doing what I wanted. So these collard plants were started on the 25th of August, and here we are on the 18th of October. So we're going to get these things transplanted. And now on collard greens, they're basically, you can harvest them all at once if you want. But in most cases, down here in the South especially, we eat a lot of collard greens themselves, just the leaves. And so it is a cut and come again. In most cases, it'll be a very prolific style plant to grow, because it'll just keep coming back, and we can harvest this thing for months. So anyway, I just wanted to take a quick minute and explain that to you, what was going to go on. And so let's get to it. Thank you, Butterfly. I appreciate that. If you happen to be able to see right here especially, you can start to tell where the water is coming up through that drip tape. Once those emitters become easier known, now you don't need to have the water on to do this, but it does make it a little simpler to find the emitters, to know where your spacing is, and to be able to go ahead and run with the work a little simpler. But while those emitters are turned on, and I turned them on right as I began to set up for filming this video, so take about 15, 20, 30 minutes depending on how much dirt you've put over it and how long the rows are and how what your soil compaction type is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling collard plants out of my seedling tray, and I'm going to lay them where they go so I can make planting a little quicker. And you can see I'm just kind of gently tossing them to the ground. These plants, when they've reached this stage, are pretty hardy. So they're already pretty, they've been outside for a long time on my seed table. So they've hardened off. They're very sturdy plants. Let's go ahead and just start by getting some of these planted and see where we're at. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So it doesn't matter which side you start on as far as where you're going to put them on the emitters and then split the difference in the emitters. One thing about drip tape is if you run it for an hour or two or more, depending on your temperatures and how much it's heating up and drying out the air and the soil, running a double row or roughly 12 inches apart on drip tape from row to row, then it'll provide plenty of water for the plants. So here's our first emitter, and so here's our little mini furrow, and so we're just going to separate I wondered why that looked funny. I didn't recognize it first. It had a little plant in there. Well, that little plant's not really viable, so we're going to pull it out. And so you can see if you have your soil prepped it's not that hard to pull these back, especially when you've already cultivated it with the wheel hoe, creating those little mini furrows. And so these are 1 foot apart on the emitters. So on the opposite side, we're just going to basically eyeball. There are no emitters here. We're just going to basically split the difference between our 2 plants. So we're going to create, in effect, a stagger plant, but both sides will be 1 foot apart in row. The only thing you want to make sure of is that you're staying relatively within that 4 to 6 inch range of the drip tape itself. Because if you're not directly on the emitter, it's easy to get yourself a little askew. And once you do this a couple of times, you get the hang of it and the feel of where those emitters should be, and it's really not that hard at all after that. All right, I'm actually going to call an audible and I'm going to stop right here. This is a full double row. I'm not even sure how many's in here, probably roughly 90 or so. And you can see I have several more. A good portion of the ones left over are double or triple germinated. And so I'm going to take the time to separate out some of these plants. I've also promised a few plants to some people, some neighbors of mine. And so I want to make sure I do that as well to honor my word. So I'm not going to plant the second row of them. I'm going to, in my next planting, my next video, I'm going to skip that row and I'm going to probably start planting lettuce. But I got videos coming up for cauliflower, broccoli, and I've already done one for Brussels sprouts to a degree, planting with my granddaughters. You can check out that video with my granddaughters in the link description. But if I need to, some of these I'm going to either up pot. I probably will up pot a lot of them, just so that I give them a space to grow and I get my tray back, because I need to start some other things too. But some of these will probably not make it for whatever various reasons. And so I want to make sure I have some to fill in those gaps if I can. Also, if I have some left over after doing that and after giving some of them to a neighbor, if I come back on this second row, if I use that row for collards, I'll probably just go ahead and do a single row planting, because that's about all I'll have left. So at any rate, I just wanted to kind of give that update to you, and we'll see how this project here goes. And if you've seen the size of my garden, you might even ask sometimes, or the question might come up to you, why am I packing them so closely when I clearly have a fair bit of space? Well, there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, I've got a lot more plants to go in the ground. Probably upwards of 1,000 plants to still go in the ground, between all the various cabbages, lettuces, some cauliflower, 2 types of broccoli, and then onions next month and garlic next month. Anyways, so there's a lot going on. Plus, I'm trying to leave some space. I'm going to be breaking my main plot apart, as well as I'm going to the other 4 plots I have. I'm going to be making a lot of changes over the next few months. So for instance, in this main plot, I'm going to start with 2 4-foot by 50-foot long, 3-foot high raised beds. Behold more videos as I do those, and first question will probably come into mind is, oh my, how expensive is that, or how are you going to fill them? Well, we'll discuss all that. It really isn't going, for me, okay, and we'll discuss resources, but for me it's not going to be hard to fill, nor is it going to be very costly. And I'll just preface that now. At any rate, so I'm going to have 2 4-foot by 50-foot raised beds is the plan going into spring of next year. We're currently in October, so I want this done prayerfully by about March. And then I'm going to have 40 feet from there as plot space, and then I'm going to have more raised beds, another 40 feet, cap it with raised beds, so forth and so on. So I'm also trying to save some of my space so I know that I can start these beds and get them in without disturbing what I've already got in the ground. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of big changes are going to be coming up on our farm, and we're going to really go to a lot of raised beds. Several reasons for this. We'll discuss it more in detail in other videos, but critters being one of them, and to be perfectly honest, back issues being another. There are, of course, many crops that you can't plant in a raised bed. It would just be too hard, especially that high a raised bed. But for the probably 60-70% of the stuff we grow, you can do it in raised beds. So at any rate, it's a big undertaking. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. And if you have any comments on how you grow collards or other suggestions, thoughts, I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Like I said, it's about mid-October right now, and it's about 75, 77 degrees now in the afternoon. I'm actually sweating quite a bit right now. So we're having, relatively cool mornings around 50 degrees and in mid-70s in the afternoon. I know that's not terrible, and it's a great day for us, to be honest with you. But we still have to deal with certain temperature conditions and heat, so we have a lot of variations to living in zone 8B than maybe you do up north if you're trying to plant these. But if you've never grown collards, never tasted them, I would highly recommend it. A lot of ways you can cook them, but they are very sweet, and they will provide you a lot of food throughout the growing season. And so also I'll say not only a big thank you, and I want to say God bless you for supporting our channel, watching these videos, liking, subscribing. That is just such a blessing to us. But if you made it this far and you happen to have watched our cabbage video, which will be down in the description, know this. If you've asked the question, you happen to see that video, and you watched all the way to the end of this video, and you happen to ask the question, it looks like he's in the exact same clothes he was in that video. The answer is yes, you are correct. I filmed that video in the morning, and I filmed this video after lunch. So there you go. We did cabbages in the morning, collards in the afternoon, but I wanted to make sure I did 2 independent videos per the variety of food. So, per the vegetable, that is. So anyway, I just want to thank you again, and say, yeah, take care, and God bless you. You are an awesome, awesome blessing to me. Thank you so much. Have a great day in the Lord.